Awesome. Well, thanks you guys. Thanks so much for coming on Friday after New Year. I know I'm not at work, so it's nice that you guys are here. But yeah, my name's Drew, and I'm just going to talk to you guys about rapid prototyping and kind of what that means to me and what it means to Double Fine, how we've used it. But also, it's just an opportunity for me to share a whole bunch of videos. So hopefully it'll be entertaining because it's mostly videos that I would not normally get to share. See a hand? Yeah.
Yeah, we can use a microphone.
Yeah, is this check?
Yeah, I need
Check. That would be terrible. Check. Yeah. Yep. Sibilance. Is that? Well, that's really loud. Better. Everybody can hear me. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, rapid prototyping. I'm going to share a whole bunch of videos that I wouldn't normally have an opportunity to share. So it's really fun for me to get to just kind of throw a whole bunch of these crazy prototypes we've made out there and share them with you guys. A lot of this is from a GDC talk that I gave last year in San Francisco. And one of the things I've already noticed talking with people here at your amazing facility, this place is incredible, is that I think you all are really already doing a lot of what I would consider rapid prototyping. It's kind of more of, I think as indies, you guys have to embrace making things really, really quickly. GDC tends to be it has people from bigger studios, has people who have a little bit more of a process they have to go through. So I'll probably just kind of gloss over some of the things that maybe are probably more obvious to all of you guys. But also to just kind of help me figure out what to talk about, I'm curious, how many people in here are students? Okay, so a bunch of students. And how many people work here in the facility itself, in the game garden? Okay, awesome. How many people are doing something other than being professional game developers or students? A few people just interested?
Like what?
Animator, okay. Just artists and stuff. Okay, awesome. Well, that's a great mix. Okay, so anyway, I'll get started. Rapid prototyping. Some introductions here. So yeah, as Romano mentioned, I'm Drew Skillman. I was a technical artist, or I've been a technical artist at Double Fine for about 8 years. I worked on Brutal Legend, Trenched, which got renamed to Iron Brigade, Stacking, Drop Chord, Autonomous, some other prototypes in between there. And I have my background really is technical art and visual effects. So you'll see a common thread in the presentation is that I'm going to be making fun of myself. Lots of videos of me being ridiculous with explosions. Lydia is also a technical VFX artist. She's on Broken Age, wrapping that up right now. So I've mentioned that I think at the end of the talk you guys will have lots of questions for her, but that's fine. I won't take it personally. I was also project lead on Kinect Party and Happy Action Theater, which was Double Fine's kind of venture into crazy Kinect games. And most recently, Sony has a game called Playroom, which gets pre-installed on all PlayStation 4s. They asked us to do some DLC for them. One of the interesting things I noticed putting this presentation together is over time, there's been an opportunity to work with crazier and crazier hardware. And that's another theme that kind of feeds into the whole department of future tech that we've been developing at Double Fine, and also just kind of, as we go through the prototypes, they're going to kind of meander through some more interesting tech. I don't know if that's just because I've had a chance to work on that, or if maybe really there's just a whole bunch of amazing new hardware coming out right now. I think it probably is the latter. I brought with me my trusty little Leap motion controller here if people want to play with that. It's really cool. But my motivation to give the talk in the first place is really that, like a lot of people here, I kind of travel everywhere I go with a sketchbook, and I like to doodle, and I like to draw, and I like to just get ideas out in a really kind of free-form way, just like a sketch. Just like a sketchbook, like what you do. And then I also have my laptop, which I'm traveling with. And I noticed this kind of strange phenomenon, which is at home I have a giant pile of sketchbooks full of just random crap. And I noticed that my computer was also filling up with random crap. And these are just snapshots of kind of my Unity project folders and my processing project folders. And I think there's a really important parallel between a pile of sketchbooks and the way that we're able to work now on our laptops, creating ideas in a way that is kind of as freeform and as fast and as intuitive as a sketchbook. I think that's hasn't been possible until very recently, like really over the last few years. And it's a trend that's going to continue. I really wanted to talk about that, which is basically treating your laptop or your computer, treating it more like a sketchbook and kind of letting yourself sketch ideas in it in that way. So yeah, think about your game prototype the same way you think about a sketchbook. And along with this, there's just some rules of thumb that I like to follow. Like, don't worry about doing things right. You don't have any expectations about what you're going to make. You're not giving yourself a bunch of pressure. You're not trying to make some amazing game. You're just literally just doodling. And cool things still happen. And one of my arguments for why cool things still happen is this was really the design philosophy behind Kinect Party. And we ended up shipping 36 kind of crazy Kinect games. And we probably prototyped more like 50 or 60 using a process like this. So if you guys aren't familiar with it, I'll just play a quick video. Sorry. Yeah, it's a lot of video of the development team, like in the trailer. So this is of course a Kinect 360 game, and it's not like a traditional game. There's no rules, there's nothing you're trying to accomplish. It's just a bunch of crazy kind of interactive experiences. And actually, we got to work with some indies and license like Minecraft stuff, they just gave us the licenses for a lot of really cool indie games. I talk about dubstep more later, so I'll just skip that, but you get the idea. Yeah, like we've really approached that really from that philosophy of just being able to sketch all kinds of crazy ideas, not worry about making them perfect, but then take our favorites from a big collection of ideas. I kind of returned to a number of things that you can get out of rapid prototyping just to thread all the crazy videos I'm going to show you together. So things I'm going to talk about are benefits you get, like building confidence in an idea that you've been working on and sharing it, learning all about your engine's capabilities, learning about new hardware, and this is again where this is an awesome approach for dealing with new technology that you've never had a chance to touch before, like the Leap Motion Controller or Oculus Rift. And failing fast, I'm sure everybody here is familiar with that. Failing fast is like the best thing you can do in video games, to have an idea and immediately see that it's not good. That's kind of one of the coolest things that can happen. Yeah, it is. It's helped us sign a lot of projects unexpectedly, like these rapid prototypes. Often you show them to people and they get excited and they will actually give you money to make them. It's kind of amazing. And I don't know if anyone's familiar with Bob Ross. There was some debate about whether Bob Ross would be well known, but I love Bob Ross, and he's this American painter who was on TV, and he would do these little 30-minute vignettes where he would start with a blank canvas and he would walk you through this awesome scene that he'd paint. And along the way, he had these happy accidents. Anytime he put a brush stroke in the wrong place, it was never a problem. He always turned it into something beautiful. And so the kind of same approach for rapid prototyping. There's no mistakes. If something goes wrong, then you can just embrace it, and it might lead you in a totally different direction. Thanks, Bob. And if people have questions, we can also talk about the Amnesia Fortnite process that Double Fine goes through. So Double Fine, once a year, has a big now public-facing game jam. And that's kind of a 2-week thing, usually teams of 5 or 6 people. It's pretty involved and it's super awesome, but that's not really what I mean by rapid prototyping. That's more of that's a big, it takes a lot of momentum to make something like Amnesia Fortnite happen. And the games that come out of it are awesome, but they're not intended to be throwaway sketches. Those games are supposed to be cool when we're done with them. Whereas when I'm talking about rapid prototyping, it's actually fine if these things are crap. That's totally not a problem at all. Because it's usually one person, maybe two, and it's usually, we're talking about like hours, not weeks. So yeah, at a high level, I'm going to talk about prototyping platforms, which a lot of people here are probably familiar with, so I'll go through that quickly. And then some concrete examples from Kinect Party, some examples for next gen, and then some examples of prototyping for new hardware. And then, oops, finally, there's going to be links, so you don't have to worry too much about writing stuff down. Oh, yeah. We've eaten a lot of those here. Very good. But I'll give you a link to the links. So prototyping platforms. One of my favorites is processing. I'm kind of curious, how many people here use processing to prototype? So definitely a handful of people, yeah. Super cool. It's awesome. Well, it's a Java programming environment. It's cross-platform. It works really well on Android phones. We've definitely developed mobile games on processing, and it's super, super good for 2D. It's also really good for like cutting-edge new hardware stuff, and I'll get to that later. But usually processing is the tool that lets you interface with new hardware almost before anything else. In the case of Kinect, you can obviously hook it up to a Kinect and really quickly start getting data out of a Kinect. In this case, you can get a point cloud with just a few more lines of code. And again, it really like, I love the fact that you just plug a Kinect into your laptop, fire up processing, and in like, you know, a screen worth of code, you actually are seeing stuff come off the Kinect, and you can start turning it into a sketch. Now Unity, how many people have used Unity? Yeah, I love Unity. I absolutely love Unity, like all of us. Total fanboy. So everyone knows about this. C# and JavaScript. It's got high-level 3D support for all kinds of stuff. OpenGL 2, DirectX 11. Has a massive community. It's awesome for 3D. It's probably my go-to for pretty much everything. But at Double Fine, we don't actually ship games in Unity. We have our own internal Buddha engine. And it's proprietary C++ Lua-based game. We originally developed it for Brutal Legend, but it's shipped pretty much every one of our games. There is actually a new engine we've developed for Broken Age that we ship some of our 2D games on, but still the Buddha engine is kind of our primary engine. And we use the Buddha engine for Kinect Party and Happy Action Theater, which was a challenge because we needed to kind of mold the Buddha engine in a way that let us approach these games with that kind of sketch-based mentality. So a few more things before I get to the videos about rapid prototyping. Again, some of this is obvious, but even the obvious stuff, in this case, I feel like it's worth emphasizing. Like if you want to make something quickly, you've got to minimize your compile times. That means using something like processing, which is an interpreted language, using something like Unity, which compiles to C# in the background, like on the fly. Or you need to work with your in-house, like your serious engine in a way that lets you develop scripting languages like Lua so that you can hot reload assets and code in a way that lets you create art and create content and change design without recompiling. Because nothing kills creativity like compiling. You also want to use building blocks, so don't ever start from scratch if you can help it. Again, super obvious, but sometimes people feel bad about like, they feel like they're stealing or something, but no, like if you can get something done without doing it yourself and without building it from scratch, like you're trying to be creative here, and so you want to steal as much as you can. And I know that sounds a little ridiculous, but like processing has a whole bunch of libraries that you can start with, like thousands of libraries that you can just easily import in to get a head start. Unity packages, you've got the asset store, which is kind of revolutionary for being able to actually like a marketplace to share content and share code that you don't want to write yourself. I mean, like a decal renderer is not a fun thing to write, but you might want one for your game. And you don't have to feel bad about paying for it, I'm serious. Then you've got your massive user base, so obviously the forums are incredible for sharing stuff there. Internally, we also have all our past games are in version control and Perforce, and we can pull all of our past games and kind of incorporate code and assets into future games. So that's another way that we're able to like reuse work that we've done in the past. But basically, you just want to be able to easily start sketching. So you don't want any barriers to even starting the creative process, like at all. You want it to be as easy to start one of these ideas as it is to open your sketchbook and like pull out a pen. So for processing, that's trivial because they actually have the idea of a sketchbook kind of built into the whole ethos of the package. Unity as you guys know, it's surprisingly easy to branch an idea in Unity. You can just duplicate the folder. So if you're like at a point in your Unity project and you want to go in some totally different direction, you can just duplicate the folder, rename it, call it something. Like in this case, I have a cool idea, and now it's my even cooler idea. And inside the Buddha engine, we had to actually create a Python script that allowed us to create, it's a Python script that we run, and it creates a sandbox level inside of Kinect Party. So that was so that any artist, technical artist, animator, character TD, anybody could say, I want to create something new for Kinect Party, and they could just sit down at the computer, run the script, and even though it was in our kind of big heavyweight C++ engine, anybody could start sketching. Okay, so that's enough about the actual platforms that we build prototypes on. Here's getting to like some of the videos. So this one's pretty fun. This one was a processing prototype that we did. Find my mouse. It's behind me. It's on behind me. Come on, front. There we go. So this is one of the very first Kinect demos that we did, and it was done in processing. And obviously, we're just doing some depth compositing. So we're taking the color feed and the depth feed, and we're just running through all the pixels inside of processing, and like you hit space bar and it takes a snapshot. Totally a sketch, super, super quick, kind of random idea, but it turned into, it actually really helped us sign the game, and it turned into something a lot bigger. Here are some just random pics from Double Fine. I was playing with this. There's Tim. That's actually, hey, actually that's my head on you, Lydia. And so that weird-ass little 1-hour experiment ended up shipping in the final game, and this is the version that it actually shipped in. There's a bar across the street from Double Fine, so we took the dev kit over and plugged it in and just like gave people beers and had them play with it. Hours of footage of that. All right, so what did we actually get out of this? Well, we learned a lot about the hardware strength, and in particular, you can see that the depth there is super crappy. It's like really jagged around the edges, and I think if I hadn't seen people playing with this, I would have immediately written it off. But you put it in front of people, and they're totally forgiving. They don't care that the depth looks like garbage. We cleaned it up as much as we could, but people were really forgiving. And also, this is kind of funny, like Microsoft was coming down and visiting with us at the time, and we didn't actually have anything on Kinect on like in our Buddha engine. We didn't have anything to show them, but we wanted to work with them, and we were able to put this and some other prototypes I'll show you in front of them, and they were super excited about it. So even though we had nothing really to show them other than these little rapid prototypes, it absolutely helped us sign the actual game. Another really fun one I like is Blizzard. So we wanted to see if we could make it snow in your living room, but again, we didn't want to put a whole bunch of time into it because it seemed like just a random idea. No one knew if it would be possible to fill your living room with snow. So we used that Python script, make new activities, so that we didn't have to bug a whole bunch of programmers. We didn't have to meeting about it. We could just sit down, and one person could just start working on it. So to give you a little idea of the process, here's how depth feed from a Kinect looks like, just a raw depth feed. And this is, of course, Kinect 1. Kinect 2 looks quite a bit better. You see the depth looks super chunky, gnarly. It's not clear at all if this is going to actually like work and we're going to be able to make it snow in your living room. How many people do a lot of shader writing, actually? Some shader stuff? But people are probably familiar with shaders. You guys have to use them every day, right, when you're making stuff. I love shaders. And this is, I think, a really cool example of what you can do with shaders, especially when you don't have any geometry to render. So this entire scene is just a video feed and a depth feed, and you get to use the entire power of the 360 to just crunch those pixels. So here's what the depth looks like if you run a Sobel filter over it. And a Sobel filter just approximates the normals of each pixel using the depth of each pixel. So it still looks pretty crappy. And this is what happens if you just isolate pixels that are facing up, pixels that have an up normal. And you can see the snow is kind of collecting in the right place, but it looks super gnarly. Like it's still super, super chunky. But this is where the beauty of the rapid prototype comes in. you want snow to accumulate. And in this little short test, it turns out what happens when you accumulate snow is you're also averaging out the noise. And so by accumulating snow, you're kind of fixing your problem. And obviously there's still some like gotchas, but at this point we're like, okay, rapid prototype, it's awesome, we want to make it. And then here's just a quick walkthrough of how we went from that to the actual shipping version. We apply like all our classic drawing, like charcoal drawing tricks, highlight, shadow, rim light. So we approximate illumination using those normals that we calculated. And then we shift the normals up in order to kind of like round out the bottom of the snow. We shift that entire texture that we've generated on the GPU, we shift it up a few pixels so that it looks like it's on top of stuff. And then, as always, we do a color grading and we throw a whole bunch of post-processing effects on this. In this case, there's like, you know, frosty window edges that we kind of brought in. And then finally, we add a whole bunch of particle effects to the process. So there's actually no geometry at all in the entire scene. And if I can have my cursor. I actually have no idea what this video is. I'm gonna skip it. I think this is the one I thought it was. Yeah, so this is actually how the final version looks when you put all those pieces together. And the sound effects help too, of course. I don't know why I got so into that pose, but but it was cool. I mean, it was super fun. It was one of people's favorite activities, and we definitely would never have stumbled across it if we hadn't been able to just take a couple hours and put it together.
It works pretty well with the fold, actually, that. You call.
Oh yeah. It's amazing that it picks that up. I can't imagine how this would look with the new Kinect. Kinect 2, this would blow my mind. We have like a hot lava one where we fill the room with hot lava. I'm just jealous. We haven't had a chance to work with Kinect 2, and I'm really jealous of whoever gets to do that, because it's going to melt people's brains. So yeah, rapid prototype, it gave us confidence that we could really do the snow and that it would be cool. We felt like, even though the noise was a problem, by accumulating snow, kind of got rid of it, enough for us to ship it. Yeah, we learned all about those ways that we could filter the depth buffer. We also learned that we could have something like 15 full screen render passes, which is insane, but it's fine if you're not rendering any geometry. So that was kind of a good lesson to learn. Another little processing prototype that had some kind of unexpected fallout is this little cloth one. We thought it might be cool to like be pushing around like a cloth, like a bunch of cloth beads, and maybe there'd be like a musical element to it. We weren't really sure. But we grabbed OpenCV library from processing. And that's not something that in the studio we were that familiar with, but this is a great example where we used that, that building block we grabbed off of the library website, put it in there. It was able to really robustly identify motion in the depth buffer, and we ended up spending a lot of time in actually re-implementing OpenCV once we were familiar with how it worked inside of processing. And that was super cool because Kinect has a built-in limitation of only tracking 2 skeletons at a time, and this was supposed to be a party game. So by stumbling across these motion blobs through processing, we found a solution to support as many players as we want at the same time. And this was huge because we were the first Kinect game to be able to have on the back of the box, like we support 6 players instead of just supporting 2. And this was the video I showed you earlier where this was the first time we got motion blobs working inside the engine. Clearly it needs to be some kind of guitar solo game. And here's another example of where it actually shipped in that Blizzard one. You can see the little red dots will appear. And that's where the motion blobs are wiping snow away. So that was cool. I mean, we failed really quickly. Turns out like pushing a cloth curtain around didn't really feel like much fun. But it really made us feel like these motion blobs were going to be awesome, so we just kind of took it a totally different direction. Another weird-ass sketch we thought is just a totally random. We're like, what kind of things could we do with a Funhouse Mirror? And we started playing with Funhouse Mirrors, and it led us into this idea where maybe we could treat every pixel of the screen like a little spring. So here we're using those same motion blobs, and we're driving the motion blobs into a texture that actually deforms every pixel like as if it were a little spring. Super weird. Super weird. I admit, it's really weird.
I didn't know Elvis worked at Double.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention. Yeah, we have Elvis, and we had Dumbledore, and we put him in a hot dog costume, and he was Dumbledog. And Dumbledog was one of our best playtesters on Kinect Party, actually. Also, Darth Vader made a few appearances. So yeah, that's just the physics behind it. We just used the force of a spring, and you guys might be familiar with Hooke's law. It defines how springs move. We were able to put that into a shader, which I love shaders. So in HLSL, this is a part of, essentially most of what you need in order to recreate that kind of spring physics inside of a full screen shader. Just because it's cool, I put the displacement texture in here so you can see this is the texture that shows how the pixels should be displaced. And I put it in there because it's an awesome example of how in the rapid prototyping process you might stumble across something unrelated that's super cool. This effect I think is really just awesome, and if we had more time we'd probably try and make like a rainbow unicorn crazy game out of it or something. And again, just says cool. This is how it looks with like different spring constants. And really strong springs. And the shipping version changed a little bit. We ended up putting you inside a big double jello, but same idea really. So yeah, it turns out treating every pixel like a little spring and doing Funhouse Mirror stuff is pretty fun. Here we return to our friend Bob Ross. This is actually Tyler Hurd, one of our character TDs, dressed up as Bob Ross for Halloween. And and just to emphasize, like, because we built this Python script, this make new activity, and anybody could make anything they wanted in a really short amount of time, we had people trying all kinds of crazy different ideas. And some of them were things that would never ship. A lot of them were things that were just there to make us laugh, like the equivalent of drawing like a little comic book in your sketchbook and trying to make your friend laugh or something. So Tyler Hurd did one of these, which became known as the forbidden activity. It's forbidden because Tim forbade us to ever, or forbid us to ever check it into Perforce. So this has never been in version control. And as you can see, this is absolutely absurd. Absolutely absurd, and there's a reason why it could never be checked into version control. But Bob Ross, happy accidents. It turned out that actually attaching simulated rigged accessories to players was like the most fun thing we'd stumbled across. And we liked it so much that we made an entire system based on his little prototype. We made an entire system that would support attaching arbitrary rigged accessories to arbitrary body parts. And we took that took that prototype and we put it on your back to turn it into a little squirrel tail. And you can see the final shipping version of that one. This is like our favorite review of the game, just a Spanish review site did a review of the game. We really liked it. But yeah, so it was totally a happy accident. It was just a joke. It wasn't supposed to go anywhere. It wasn't supposed to mean anything, but it really showed us something that could be awesome. We also had a bunch of other unused prototypes that were just unused for various reasons. These were all put together by Panya Inverson, another one of the tech artists at Double Fine. And again, this is kind of emphasized the fact that we were really trying to make it inclusive so that anybody could experiment with this stuff. We didn't want it to be a big meeting in order to get something off the ground, because then we wouldn't have been able to do some of the wonderful things that he did. So here we've got our energy swords, which are not to be confused with lightsabers. This one's good too. Yeah, that was pretty
It
good.
didn't get in?
No, it's a kid's game. It's a kid's game. Yeah.
Parents wouldn't. That's
And you can imagine combining those two, right? Energy swords meets dismemberment. It'd be pretty
You can
sweet.
talk still when your head's off and all that.
And that was actually, just as an aside, the way we make your head disappears, we actually use our system for attaching accessories that was inspired by the forbidden activity. And we put a big sphere on your head, and we simply put a shader on it that renders the background on your head. And then and then of course we put a bunch of blood, because that's just what you do. This one's silly. We actually were trying to get Stephen Colbert to let us include him in the game. But he didn't ever get back to us. So, you know, these were just some random things. They didn't end up in the game. They did make us feel better about them. We thought they would be cool, and it was fun to share them with our coworkers. And we learned more about what the hardware could do and what we might do in the future with it. And it actually really helped us sign projects, surprisingly, because around this time we started having all these conversations with Sony, and they had the PlayStation 4 and the new camera and the new light bar. And because we had this kind of stable of random ideas that we'd thrown out from Kinect Party or that we just like made on the side, we were able to show them to Sony and get them excited about it, even though these weren't ever going to end up in a shipping game, much to my disappointment. So that's the kind of section on rapid prototyping and Kinect Party. And now I was going to move a little bit more into rapid prototyping for next gen, which is another really, really rich topic. I don't really know what to call this, because I made this slide before the PlayStation 4 came out, and now I guess it's current gen. I don't know if it instantly goes from next gen to current gen the minute the console's out, or if I can still call it next gen. PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and like the Titan GPU graphics card. I'll say that's next gen for now. So in the case of Kinect Party 2, like what would we do if all of a sudden we had this awesome, fancy new hardware? And the thing that I would propose is that we experiment in Unity. So I mentioned dubstep. Dubstep was one of our most popular activities from Kinect Party, and if we were going to do another one, I'd want to kind of build on this. So for those who haven't seen it, I'll just play a quick video of the dubstep activity.
All right, Brian, get in there and mix it up.
This is from a giant bomb.
Just missing the neon.
This is amazing! Here it comes. Where's the drop?
So this is just obviously combining all our favorite. It's like combining background subtraction with accessories and then scrubbing the video feed to the music and stuff. But one of the things about this is that the scrubbing had to be entirely defined in advance. So we had our composer, our awesome electronic composer who we've worked with a lot, do this cool track, and then we had to like manually figure out all the scrubbing in order to match it. And if we were doing a new one, it'd be great to let you play your own music and have it just dynamically scrub to it. And so again, really quickly, we just threw together a Unity prototype. And sometimes it's kind of embarrassing how easy it is to recreate things in Unity, because we recreated most of that activity in like a few lines of Unity, which is good for Unity, I guess. But you can see this is just like collecting all of the frames from the video feed and then like creating like a flip book that we scrub between using audio input in order to determine the scrubbing. And this is how that one came out. So it's kind of like the same idea, but what's cool is it's dynamically driven by the music, like in real time. Super cool. And the other reason that I point this one out is that, you know, the great thing about using Unity is you can deploy to a website. And so this is actually up right now. If you go to drewskillman.com/game/dubstep and you've got like a webcam on your computer, I can share that with anyone who I'm excited about being like, hey, I think we should make dubstep 2.0 or whatever. I can actually like share that with people. They also make it really easy to, you know, in a sketch environment, you can pipe data back and forth. So you can replace the video feed with a YouTube video if you want, which would be really hard to do in our engine. It does have a drop, but you kind of can imagine what's coming. I'll skip it. Sorry, that's torture. It's torture, I'm sorry. So, yeah, you know, prototypes that tell us more about what we might want to pursue in the future, and happy accidents like trippy kitties. Yeah, bitchin' fast 3D. So this is kind of, this little piece is about sketching for specifically the performance side of next gen. So you've got like these crazy powerful CPUs, these crazy GPUs, but like how do you decide what you're going to do with them, and how do you know what they're actually capable of? Like if you're building a game, you kind of got to get a feel for where they're going to break and where they're going to excel. And compute shaders are a super fascinating area there. I'm curious, how many people have had a chance to work with compute shaders? Not very many. Do people know what, is that a, do people familiar with compute shaders?
I don't know what it is. Nope.
Okay,
Nope.
compute shaders are a super cool new kind of DirectX 11 feature, and they're soon going to be in the new version of OpenGL. And what it does is it lets you, in a more general way, use your GPU as a way of processing data in like a massively parallel way. You could kind of do this in the past in that one I showed where we were treating each pixel of the screen as a little spring. That's kind of like a similar idea, like you're telling the graphics card to compute something other than visuals. But in the new versions of DirectX 11, they have a name for that, which is a compute shader, and it's a shader that computes something, computes just any data you want without the intention of displaying it to the screen. And the changes they've made make that incredibly fast. But like how fast is incredibly fast? So of course, coming from effects, the thing we want to do is make a compute shader-based particle system and see what happens with it. This is up online, so I'll kind of breeze past it, but this is the Unity code, that's all the Unity code that's required to set up a compute shader. So you've got some buffers, you're initializing them with some accelerations and some positions. This is actually where you're telling Unity to run the compute shader. This is where you're taking the compute shader and actually rendering the results of it to the screen. Not the actual compute shader, but just the results of it. And this is kind of how a compute shader looks. It looks really scary. It's filled with like weird shader semantics that don't make any sense, but you don't have to actually understand all the details to be able to use them. So I just took all of those and we, just to see what it could do, made a 20,000 particle system. But what's interesting is that every particle in this particle system is calculating the force of gravity with every other particle, which is 400 million gravity calculations per frame. And it runs in real time. And I'm a terrible programmer, so it was not optimized in any way. So this totally surprised me. I really didn't expect a compute shader to be that powerful, and that wasn't even on a very good graphics card. That was just like DirectX 11, being able to use DirectX 11 inside of Unity. Now that I know that, if I were going to do something visual, I would definitely lean on compute shaders and maybe try and make an entire game based on something like that, because I think it's just so unique. And now the last section that I'm going to dig into is prototyping for new hardware. So specifically, this is kind of like all the crazy new input devices that are coming out. We've had a lot of these are out now already. Like we've got motion control, we've got inertial sensors. That's like 6-axis controller and your iPhone accelerometer. We've got touch, multi-touch. Leap motion has come out. I mentioned that we've got a Leap here to play with. The PlayStation 4 controller, the Kinect 2 has crazy high precision body tracking. And a lot more is coming. We've got eye tracking, face tracking, the Oculus Rift is coming out. And you guys have probably already seen, like, there's talk of brain tracking, which is pretty cool. And I think that, you know, it's really fun to apply all the same sketchy, rapid prototyping principles to this, like, explosion of new hardware. And in fact, we had a chance to try and do that for the PlayStation 4 before we had any PlayStation 4 hardware. We were just kind of curious, what kind of games might we pitch? And this goes back to, I mentioned that we were having some conversations with Sony, and we were like, well, maybe we'll want to work together. And what we decided to do is actually fake it. So we took a PlayStation 4 controller, which has a light bar so that you can get its position, but it also has all the controller input and the accelerometer data. And we faked it with a 360 controller and a Kinect. I don't think we ever actually told Sony that we were faking it. But we faked it using Unity and this awesome Unity plugin called Zigfoo, which I don't think they're in business anymore, but I think they still sell their plugin. It's a really, really awesome Kinect plugin if you want to play with Unity and Kinect. Now they've announced native Xbox One, PlayStation 4 Unity support. I'm sure we're all in this room super excited about that. Less stuff that we have to make ourselves. And this is one of the prototypes we came up with there. It's we call it the Funny Fish. This is our amazing concept art Raz, who's puppeteering the Funny Fish. And that was the idea we were going to explore. It was like, is it cool to use the PlayStation 4 controller to kind of puppeteer a character? Okay, go. And he's got the controller in his hand, and he's kind of moving the mouth and the eyes and the body around with it.
Seaweed! Seaweed! Lots of seaweed!
Anyway, he does this for a long time. For some reason, it's all about seaweed. So that was an interesting experiment. What we did.
Voice recording there?
What's that?
Was there a voice recording?
No, that's just his voice. He calls it Flirty Baby. That's the voice. Here's another one we did using that same setup, the Kinect plus Xbox 360 controller. We were like, well, what if we're in a submarine? And so we take the video feed from the Kinect camera, what would be the PlayStation 4 camera, and we put it inside a submarine, and we're kind of like exploring this underwater sea. Another one was like, well, what if we kind of like get back and like create a toy, like a virtual toy, the same way you'd play with like an action figure as a kid. And this was a really fast prototype, as you can imagine. This is like Google image search Buzz Lightyear, remove background, copy paste fire effect, and duplicate cube. And that's pretty much the entirety of this one. So just some random prototypes. Again, they help teach us like what might be fun to do with the PlayStation 4 and maybe what we wouldn't want. That submarine is not very cool. We did not want to pursue that one. But again, we showed this to Sony, and it additionally helped us sign stuff. And in this case, we actually did sign on to do some DLC for them with their launch kind of like hardware showcase called the Playroom. And it was like Kinect Party in that there's no point, it's not really a game, it's more of just like an interactive experience. What was exciting is that it comes pre-installed on every PlayStation 4, and so that was both awesome and a little intimidating. But we got to go to Japan and meet the guys. They have a studio that's very similar to our studio, Double Fine. This is Nick and Yutaka, who are the producer and project lead, and they're super nice. It was really cool getting to work with Japan. But we came back from Japan, and we were like, what have we done? We have an unfamiliar engine, we have unfamiliar hardware, we have an unfamiliar code base. It's in Japanese. We have a Japanese code base. It's a launch title, we have a really small team, and we have like 5 months. And we were just like, well, the sushi was really good, but oh my God, what have we done? Like, what did we just sign up for? We pretty much had no choice but to really return in full force to rapid prototyping in order to figure out, like, wrap our heads around all of this stuff. And what we decided to do was something called, we called 30 Prototypes in 30 Days. It's inspired by something that you guys are probably familiar with, 30 paintings in 30 days. It's like often like an art exercise you might do in school or you might just do for fun. And it forces you to focus on just like making stuff and like being sketchy. And that was really what we wanted to do. We wanted to make as many prototypes as we could, and then we wanted to pick the best. And that's something that you were doing in Game Up, and it sounded like you're doing really similar stuff where you'll make a Unity prototype and you'll figure out a whole bunch of stuff you want to do, and then you'll throw it out and you'll recreate it in like your own internal code base. And that's something that we were definitely going to do the same thing with. So we were going to develop all this stuff in Unity and then effectively throw it out and recreate it inside of the Japanese engine that we were super intimidated by. The way we unblocked ourselves so that we could do 30 prototypes is we created a Unity script that was really short, a little C# script that communicated with the PlayStation 4 server. So the PlayStation 4 actually, over the internet, would send the video feed and the controller data and the light bar position and all kind of face detection stuff. It would send the entire suite of data over the PC so that we could, again, have a rapid prototyping environment where we had no compile times, we had those building blocks that we could use, and we had the opportunity to like easily start these sketches. Raz, the guy who did that flirty baby voice, also, in the meantime, we'd been talking about design, and he put together this really cute gooey alien that was kind of going to be the centerpiece for all of our experiments. So here's some of those sketches. This is one of the first ones, and we were just using Unity's soft body cloth in order to see if it might be fun to like kind of play around with like a gooey ball gel. Yeah, flubber. Yeah. This one, I apologize. This is really stupid. I shouldn't have included this. That's using the touchpad to like squash and stretch him. And we thought like maybe farting him would be fun. It was not. It was actually a really stupid idea. Yeah, it's a really stupid idea. This was a little bit farther along. We experimented with putting him on a flying saucer, and we'd done a bunch of experiments with like lattice deformers in order to make him jiggly, and ways of layering animation on top of procedural animation on top of like fluid physicsy stuff. One of my favorite parts though is at the end. We have a tongue banjo. So this we thought was great. We really thought this was cool, but it was like absolutely with the Sony camera hardware. The Sony camera is not as precise as the Kinect. With what we had, with what we had, although it was cool and we liked it, you know, this was teaching us about the hardware. We were learning about the hardware, and even though everybody loved the tongue banjo, there was no way that we could do it and support multiple people. Their hardware and their software just wasn't at that point yet, so we had to throw it out. But it did help us decide that we really liked the UFO control. We liked having him really blobby. We found a lot of like cool different things that we could do. Yeah, some of those ideas were definitely fails. Another thing that we really wanted to explore is face tracking, which the PlayStation 4 does support. Here's just an iPhone video. This is when we were in Japan and they were showing us the raw face tracking data. You might not be able to see it super clearly, but there's these little green dots all over our face that are the PlayStation 4 track, kind of doing contour tracking. And it was a big question like this. They showed us this. It's super cool. We got really excited about it. But again, crazy new hardware, crazy new tech, and we have no idea like how to actually turn this into a game. So what we did is created our awesome character TD, Adrian Milian, created this cool mesh face, and then in Unity we were piping data from the PlayStation into Unity, and we skinned all these different joints to the right parts of the face in order to kind of try and recreate the face tracking. So we're taking your face and basically superimposing it. And the face we chose, of course, was Tim Schafer's face. This was interesting. I don't know what to say about it. It really didn't work very well. Although we had a lot of fun, like pretending to be Tim and making him say stuff. But it definitely counts as like seriously uncanny valley. It's just like something's terribly wrong. He's terribly sick. So then we're like, okay, well maybe we can map him. Maybe we can still use the data and map it onto our little gooey alien friend. And this was kind of cool, so like we smoothed it a ton, and we were like really controlling how it would be mapped to like different features. And we actually got this working pretty well, but only for very specific people. Like you couldn't be wearing glasses, you couldn't have any facial hair, you had to be white. Like it was really, really restrictive. And so thankfully, because we'd been doing this as like a really, really quick sketch, we weren't that attached to it. Like, I would have hated if we decided that, like, we're going to do face tracking, and we had meetings about it and invested a ton of engineering time in it. But because it was like us really, really fast, you know, it took like maybe a day or two to get most of these pieces put together. When we realized that it just was going to be impossible to pull it off, we really didn't mind. Just like, we learned about it, and we did not mind just like cutting the feature. We're just like, that would have been awesome. Maybe for something like that, you really need, like, the Kinect 2.0 has an infrared camera, and so it doesn't, like, it can detect facial features and depth without needing very specific lighting information. So I think it's still possible, but it's going to take some better hardware. I don't know. This is just another ridiculous video I just wanted to include. It's a prototype that we put together quickly, and it did end up shipping, even though it's really weird. This isn't the part that we shipped. We had him kissing the screen, but we also had this like dance party mode that we liked. We just like flashing the lights and playing Daft Punk and like putting tracers on them and stuff. And Adrian did a really hilarious like dance animation. Kind of awkward when the music stops. So all these random prototypes, you know, they were helping us shape. We were doing, again, a prototype a day, and they were helping us shape what would eventually be the shipping game. And this is the final Unity prototype that we ended up sending to Japan. It's got some annotations in it because it was specifically for them to understand some of the stuff that we've been doing. But at this point, we knew enough about what we were making that we were ready to throw this prototype away. And at the same time, our engineering team, it's actually a really good point. During this time, our engineering team, which is generous because it was one rockstar programmer named David Farrell, he did all of it. He was basically learning how to speak Japanese, and he was integrating Lua into their engine so that we could take all of this work and recreate it inside of Lua, which they had never used before. And in fact, in their engine, everything is just hard-coded in C++. So while we were prototyping in Unity, he was basically setting the groundwork so that we could continue to work in this very, very fast, kind of rapid development style inside of their engine. It was definitely cutting it close. Anyway, this is the shipping version, which I think just came out a few days ago. Or maybe it crashed. Oh, tricky. Okay. So there's this crazy guy. We call him affectionately Flexible Frank. And he was a musical instrument. You could like squash and stretch him with a touchpad. You could smash him around and break stuff. It was really about like destroying these little toy cities, abducting cows. But you can see just kind of how all those 30 prototypes in 30 days ended up, like, obviously driving the development of this. And I think without those prototypes, there's no way we would have been able to make something inside their engine in such a short timeline. It was really, really, really aggressive. Some of the wins from this, it really gave us a massive head start by unblocking the content creation team. All of us could make stuff while the engineers were actually solving the hard problem of learning Japanese. But there were some really, really tricky things we ran into, which as much as I love rapid prototyping, I have started to like run into some pitfalls. So be careful. One of them is unintentionally designing to your prototyping environment's strengths. It's really hard to avoid this. Because when you're building these building blocks, you can sometimes pull something that's just like either impossible to implement in your engine, or it's really not performant. Like, we really love the volumetric lighting inside of Unity. There's an awesome volumetric lighting plugin. And recreating that inside the engine was really time consuming. Similarly, physics. Actually, it was pretty funny. We had built most of our assets in a way that we could export either to Unity, or we could export them to what would be the final engine. So we had this like bi-directional export pipeline we'd built. But we built the world to the physics scale that Unity preferred, and we couldn't understand why our physics was exploding in the Japanese engine. And it ended up turning out that we had to rescale every asset in the game and like reposition everything because we've been building it to Unity. So there's all these weird ways that you can really burn yourself. Especially, you guys have probably heard of the 90-90 rule. It's pretty great and accurate. The first 90% of the code accounts for the first 90% of the development time. The remaining 10% of the code accounts for the other 90% of the development time. Rapid prototyping is so much fun and it's so fast that it's like really easy to forget that. You're making stuff and you're seeing stuff and you're getting really excited and you can totally forget that even though it's awesome and you can put it in someone's hands and you can maybe even get something signed, there's still a lot of work left. So you gotta be really careful about your scope. Let's see. It's been about, okay. There's just a few more things I'll kind of race through because I know we've been sitting for a while. Leap, is everybody familiar with Leap? Have people, there's probably not a lot of people have. Does anyone here actually own a Leap? Oh, cool, cool. Super cool little hand tracking gizmo. They actually live a few blocks away from us. And at some point, we got hooked up with them and they invited us over to the studio and we're hanging out with them and they gave us a whole bunch of leaps and they basically were like, take them home and see what you can do. And so we had a weekend, maybe it was 3 days, to take this like awesome new hardware and like see what we could make. So again, we resorted to the usual rapid prototyping tricks. This is the prototype that I put together. I guess I call it finger swords. But it basically you get a torch on one hand and a sword on the other hand. And you can kind of just like explore this labyrinth and like there's a scary spider that comes up. Jeremy Mitchell, one of the other technical artists at Double Fine, did this great one, which you control with your bunny ears in your hand. So what happens is the hunter comes and you have to hide. And Patrick Hackett, this is a ridiculous picture of him, but he's actually also been working in what we kind of have been informally or informally, I guess, calling the future tech department at Double Fine. He did one that became Drop Chord, and this is a prototype we did where he actually wrote it in processing, and then I just did the visual effects in processing. And this is the one that they ended up getting really excited about. So it was just exploring like all kinds of different visual patterns and visual styles and trying to figure out like what we might want to do in the final shipping game. And processing, again, it's really awesome for 2D. You can do really cool OpenGL, full screen, shader path stuff really, really quickly. So that was the prototype that we showed to Leap. And then they ended up agreeing to let us work with them, and this is the final version that we made. So you can kind of see the influences from the early one, the early prototype that we put together. But again, like Adrian, we took that early prototype and ripped it apart and completely rebuilt it in our own engine after we were confident. Well, really after we got it signed. And that was crazy. I think we had 6 weeks to make that game. I think it was 6 weeks. It was absurd. So yeah, it helped us reinforce some ideas about what might be cool for the Leap. Learned about what it could do. Got some projects signed. Just kind of cool. Actually, Drop Chord ended up being #1 on the Leap Motion Store, which is great for us. It's actually, well, we can talk about other things about the Airspace Store later. We also did Autonomous, just as an aside. Autonomous is another Leap game that we just released. Autonomous, intriguingly, was an Amnesia Fortnite prototype that we ported over. Day of the Devs is a big event Double Fine did in San Francisco recently, and I took the leap and did a music visualizer, which I just think is cool. It doesn't have anything to do with games, but I'm putting it in the talk anyway. Oh yeah, there's the leap on top of the music And then the very, very last prototype I'm going to show you guys is I call prototyping for next gen devices. So this is, far in the future. But I stumbled across Arduino recently. How many people have been doing stuff or are familiar with Arduino? Yeah, a lot of people. Arduino is awesome. It's so cool. Basically a programmable chip that you can hook up to your computer and basically write hardware programs that will run, interact with hardware interfaces that you wouldn't normally be able to, just do all kinds of really crazy physically based, physically based development. The Arduino IDE is basically processing. In a nutshell, it looks and behaves exactly like processing. So if you use processing, you'll be familiar with it. This amazing plugin just came out called Untiduino. And that's a Unity plugin that lets you also interface with Arduino. And actually, we were working with some friends in San Francisco on a puzzle project, and I only just got it working, but there's like a puzzle in Unity that you can solve, and when you solve it, it'll actually unlock an actual physical lock in your room. It's crazy stuff coming out. But the one I want to talk about now is brain tracking, that thing I alluded to earlier. So you can buy this at the store. It's called a force trainer. It's this thing you wear on your head, and you can actually like make a ball go up and down. And the question is, okay, well, can you make a game with that? Is it cool?
Psychonauts
2. Exactly.
His idea.
Yeah, do we want to actually partner with these guys and make Psychonauts 2? I mean, as ridiculous as it is, it could happen. It's not like outside the realm of possibility. So, like, let's start sketching rapid prototyping with this crazy hardware. So we go to a toy store, buy one of these things. There's awesome tutorials online for how to interface with Arduino and how to use the Arduino processing like interface with it. This is the one I built on the right. It's not as slick looking as the tutorial, but it's basically the same thing. So obviously we have to hook it up to a particle system because that's what we do. And this is how the brain scanning thing looks hooked up to a particle system. And yeah, I was like playing with this, looking at it, and I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. You're like thinking, meditating, focusing, this like awesome sphere of blue light is moving around, and I was getting really excited about it, probably too excited. But then actually, a friend came over, and I was showing him, and we were having some beers, and I can't remember, someone suggested this. We put the brain scanner, and we put it on, we had, I think, 3 or 4 beers, and we wrapped a wet towel around it, and we put the brain scanner on top of it.
It's thinking.
And it's thinking. And my friend really had his feelings hurt because he thought he was doing like, he thought that we were trying to make him, we were like relating him to a wet towel or something. But you can see this wet towel is like driving the particle system around, and Yoda is like affirming that he's a really good Jedi. Yoda's like, great Jedi are you? Yeah, you can hear him back there. And so yeah, I mean, this is one of those examples where rapid prototyping, yeah, $50 mind control's not quite there yet. Rapid prototyping saved me from, it was fun, a few hours, but I would have hated to like spend a lot more time than that. I'm sure eventually it'll get there and mind control will be awesome, but not quite yet. So yeah, failing fast, awesome. Okay, so just to wrap up stuff we talked about, you know, minimizing compile times. It's totally obvious, but it's totally critical. Nothing like kills your creativity like that. Building blocks. I used to feel guilty about it. I don't even guilty anymore. If someone has something on the asset store that's going to save me a few hours and it costs $5, I will absolutely spend the $5. And then that sketchbook approach where, like, ideally, if you're on a plane and you're flying from one place to another and you have an hour, like, you want to be able to sit down and doodle something on your computer the same way that you doodle something in your sketchbook. And yeah, cool things will still happen. And I do think that this is like really unique. I don't think that we've been in a position to do this until recently. I think it's like the awesome tools that we've been talking about and new tools that you guys are developing, especially the students here. You guys are in like a crazy place. If you think back to what people had to go through making games and how much of their time was spent being creative 10 years ago, versus how much of your time can be spent being creative now, it's probably an order of magnitude more time that you can spend being creative than actually like writing assembly or whatever. Which is not to say, last thing I'll say is, I'm including solving creative technical problems counts as being creative. I'm just talking about like writing a HTML parser or something. Like you probably don't have to do that if it's been written already. These links, they're up online. Oh, and the last thing I'll say is that your country is awesome, especially for an effects artist. I got to spend New Year's Eve in Dam Square. It was pretty much the coolest New Year's Eve I've ever had. I got nice slow motion footage. Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much for having me. It's really fun. Country's amazing. And yeah, Lydia and I will be here answering any questions. I think we're all going to go get beers. Oh, and if anyone's at GDC, there's a VFX roundtable that I'd love it if you guys could come to. So I'll get back to you, Rumor.
Yeah, first of all,